nuance and
Yeah.
like that.
that we have. So.
But she actually he sends her like audio of
Him
different
speaking.
lectures, and she transcribes them. So she really likes to filter it out.
If I make a mistake, then he looks at me. I mean, then I.
My father had he had chess, he had checkers for me, he had a game of Risk, they played card games, and at any given time, Dad would start a game, and then Jay would come over and he'd challenge him to make the next move. Now, of course, this chess game probably went on for 3 years. But, every time he had made a move, Dad had kind of critiqued him on it, and it was always interesting to see how Jay would respond to things. I remember going out to St. John's Military Academy also. That was out in Delafield, Wisconsin.
In where?
Delafield, Wisconsin. It was a military school that Jay had been sent to. Now we had sent him to the public schools where we lived, but I don't think he was challenged at all. I mean, he was always outwitting either his teachers and Mom would always say, Mom already knew what it was. Grandma was like, well, he's just being a smarty pants. But it's like, no, he just wasn't challenged enough, So, I think years ago they classified things as behavioral problems, which they really weren't behavioral problems. They were just, it's like, say, stand on that P right over there, and what's the purpose of standing on this P? Is it because I'm doing something great, or I have to stand on this P,
But just questioning because of so much intelligence.
Right, exactly. So I hadn't seen him. Of course, I hadn't seen my big brother in quite some time, and so we went out there on a Sunday afternoon, and it was a typical 60s thing. My dad had that little sports cap on, and a sweater with the leather. I remember seeing that. Why is he wearing that? Mom was, of course, very pretty, and she had her full skirt on and her high heel shoes. Janice had gone out there, and she was wearing, we were all, the thing for me was that I never wanted to wear, the gloves and the hat. To me, it was like, what is the deal with the gloves and the hat? Why do I have to?
And you were just a little girl.
I was just really, I was really
Weddings and
little.
things.
Yeah, well, Sunday church or, and I remember I must have pouted about it, and she was holding my hand, or I'm holding her hand, and I can see when she's walking that, what color her lipstick was. I'm looking up, and so we went out there to see Jay, and I was like ready for him to start being Jay. He was dressed in this military costume. I was thinking, why is he doing this? Why is everybody wearing these clothes like this? I couldn't figure out what it was. He wasn't the Jay that I knew. He wasn't happy. I didn't like the costume that he was in.
Like, who is this guy?
Yeah. When I look back on it now, I kind of felt like I had not visited him because I didn't see his spirit. Because brothers will be brothers. They poke each other and do dumb stuff, and You know, you walk by him and he slaps him in the head. You know, they're just being brothers, you know. And then all of a sudden it was like we were taking all of these things that Jay had as a brother with Jeff, and we were making him behave by putting him in this military costume. To me, that was...
He got sent there because of his quote-unquote...
Yeah, I think that,
behavior.
I don't know if it was so much the behavior. I think they wanted... Jay was always, everybody knew he was smart. I mean, everybody knew that. I mean, my aunts, my uncles, Jay was to take over the family business. And a cousin of mine, who was also a male, I think he was 2 years younger, no, 2 years older than Jay was. My father's oldest brother. And when you went to the Erdman house in Elm Grove, there was a set of tennis courts on the end of the property. And it was quite a walk. I mean, it was very pretty, but it was a walk. And all of a sudden, my cousin comes running up, one of the girls, and she says, he fell over he jumped over the, Patrick, jumped over the tennis net, and now he can't breathe. He's not alive. There's something wrong with him. And of course, back then we didn't have 911, so...
That was Jay?
No,
the cousin.
that was my cousin, yeah. So everybody ran out there, all the grown-ups rode out there, and we kids were supposed to stay back, and then they were trying to figure out how to pick him up to take him to the hospital, and unfortunately he had broken his spleen and he was dead.
Oh,
And yeah. And he was the quintessential perfect boy. He would, he followed all the rules. I don't know if he was, I mean, his sister Karen, I still see her at family reunions and whatnot, but that was like a whole chapter of the Erdmans that was never written because of that abrupt ending to that.
Mm-hmm.
And then, of course, Jay was the one who was going to be taking over. And Dad thought, great, I'm going to redeem my pace in this family, because even though I couldn't be a pastor, my son will be he'll be the managing, or I should say the president or the CEO of this company. And that'll get me in good graces. And Jay was just kind of like,
indifferent, huh?
no, he didn't. And a lot of it, I thought, maybe just was the 60s. I mean, we as Americans just lost a lot of our innocence in the 60s. It was hard to figure out what was going on. All of us were. I mean, I remember coming home in the afternoon, and my dad, my mom would always have the nightly news on, and of course he would have his Manhattan there, and they'd talk about how many people had died that day
In the Vietnam War.
War. And so it was hard from that standpoint. And I think, some of it was Dad thought if he got Jay smart enough or esteemed enough, he wouldn't have to go overseas. Or he'd be higher in the military, so he wouldn't have to go see the front line. But when he went out to school, things were going on out there that were.
And where was that then?
That was in.
He went to Providence College in Rhode Island, didn't he?
Mhm.
Is that
Brown. At that town it was Brown.
Brown? Oh yeah, Brown
Um,
University
Yeah.
in Providence.
Yes. And I think Jay wasn't sure what he wanted to do. I think he was thinking that education was not something that he needed because he was smarter than most of these people were anyway. And I didn't see too much of him after that. Now, I don't know if Mother Lori ever told you, we had a hard time finding Jay. We knew kind of where he was, but we didn't know for sure. And because my father had threatened to
After
give
he
his
joined the
name,
devotees, huh? He
um,
threatened to disown
to-
him.
disown him and give his name to the draft board.
Oh.
My father was also in well, the FBI had come over to the house and they wanted to know why Jay was no longer there. And they were concerned with...
They were drafting people.
Yeah. And then, of course, the police sat down at the end of our block forever. And I still don't know why they picked on Jay. What was the deal with Jay?
He was distinguished even at that time.
Yes, I don't know. I mean, I remember my mom saying, well, you know, Jay, she never forgave Jay for throwing that ball and breaking her window. That's why they're there. It's a big deal with that, you know.
What was the relationship between Jay and your mom? How was that? Because
Being a stepchild and
but not as well. Your father and his mother were divorced when they were teenagers, isn't it?
Well, Lori is my stepmother. I'm the one who is the foster, the stepchild.
Oh,
My mother died when I was 9. I was taken away from her when I was less than 2.
did she take care of you then, Mother Lori?
Yes.
Oh,
Well,
I didn't realize
some of it.
no, I
Yeah,
didn't
some of that.
either.
It was on and off for many years. And then my sister Jan had moved to California, and Jeff had moved to California, and Dad had paid a family to take care of me. And when I think back on it, they were just wonderful people, the Spence family. I was one of the kids. And they had 5 of them. And
Who is this then?
it was a family that my father had paid to take care of me. He was on the road at the time for Badger Paint, because that was kind of his backup thing, because they didn't want him as a pastor, so he just started doing... Every one of the brothers had like a thing they had done. Dad's was supposed to be... He was supposed to be the pastor, the person that was supposed to help our family become more insightful of Christ.
God conscious.
And then one of his brothers was the marketing person. And then there was the other guy who took care of finance. And then from a legal standpoint, Uncle Ted took over. And none of these men had children that were male, except for one, Uncle Norbert. Had this son that was 2 years older than Jay. And he was to take over the business until he had broken his screen, and then he was the only, Jay was like...
Next in line.
Yeah.
In the dynasty kind of.
Yeah. Isn't that strange?
No,
yeah.
but
Well, it changed all of our lives. I think my dad was hurt by Jay doing this. He just kind of felt like, this is what you're supposed to do, you know. And my dad growing up, and I don't know for sure, he only spoke of his face some of the time, but he had a birthmark that covered most of his face, and it was purple. And I remember as a kid, you'd be like, my friends would be like, what's wrong with your dad's face? It's like, well, he's got a birthmark. And it's like, can I get it? It's like, no, it doesn't come that way, you know. And then once,
like, that's cool.
yeah. But then after a while, once you met him and you realized what, he had this ability to kind of zoom in on you and tell you about yourself. Like there was this girl, Karen Sherman, and I'm still friends with her. She lived 2 doors down from us, and Karen's dad was a police officer. And but he knew that Karen absolutely loved her gold hair. Her mom she had this beautiful blonde golden hair, and her mother would put it up and put things in it, and that's what Karen's hair was always like. My dad would say, "Oh, your hair looks just wonderful today, Karen," and she'd be like, "Oh, yeah," you know, and he kind of felt, he knew how to talk.
Somebody feel like important, you know?
Yes. But
I think he got that. I think Jay got that.
But it must have been just an absolutely cool thing growing up with that birthmark. I mean, I can't imagine the things that people must have said to him.
But it sounds like he had so much really self-confidence and, was...
Well, I think I remember him saying nobody ever coddled me. And, but I think my grandmother did. I think they did to a certain extent. I think that they literally spent, and my grandmother said this, millions of dollars. And I'm not really sure what that meant, but I know that he had sent, Dad was sent to many different places to try to get this thing off of his face. And some of them were experimental, and I think they were painful. And as a kid, I mean, it was just the way my dad looked. It was just him. And 5 minutes after you met him, you never saw it again. No. So, maybe in a cruel way, I remember somebody saying, well, your dad has got something on his face, and, he's so-and-so, and, these were all things that children did. But I think that, I think Jay picked up on that. I think he was able to
because,
feel that pain.
He really does make every single person feel like they're important and that he's concerned about them. And it's genuine. It's completely genuine. It's not for any kind of like fame or,
But I think Jay also, growing up, it was very hard when our parents divorced, or when his mother and my father divorced. My mother was an alcoholic, and
sorry to interrupt, but were you already in the family when they divorced?
Jay, Janice, and Jeff were my father's first marriage to Mother Lori. When they got divorced, 2 years later, he met my mother, and they had me. they were divorced within that 2-year window. I was taken away from my mother. She was an alcoholic. And, back then I just think that people got married much quicker. I mean, they just got married either because they wanted to have sex, or we gotta get married,
Or they were pregnant.
or they're pregnant, yeah. I mean, I don't think, there was this formality of what they were supposed to do. I always related my family to the Rat Pack. My father always wore suits. He always had a tie. My parents always had a full bar. And even though I don't drink, I don't think I'd be known as a good girl if I didn't have a full bar, Richard and I both don't drink, but I always have wine, I always have brandy, I just threw a 12-pack away of beer, replaced it in case somebody stopped by and wanted a beer, That's kind of how we grew up. They always smoked cigarettes, People who had tattoos were kind of rough. Yeah. My dad always had music, Dean Martin and Frank Sinatra. Oh, yeah.
Mel Torme. Yep.
My dad really loved jazz, so he was a Coltrane nut. And he had the reel-to-reel, so that was kind of cool. We always had the best, so to speak, grown-up toys.
They were pretty wealthy.
Yeah, oh yeah. We had, I know they later called them mini bikes, but we had these little motorized scooters, and my dad he had time to tinker, so he had devised this thing that was a fogger, because the backyard would be very full of mosquitoes. We had these great big weeping willow trees. So he devised this thing on there, and he would turn it on, and he'd tell the boys that he could ride this mini bike all over the yard, and of course Jade always pushed it right to the limit, he was always getting in trouble, but I think it was because he was always,
Actually,
yeah.
In our philosophy, Srila Prabhupada, who is Jay's spiritual master, he said mischievousness is a sign of intelligence.
Yeah.
So there you have it.
Yeah, that's what he was. So,
So then he joined the temple in what year? 69? 68.
68.
And then you just kind of lost track of him?
What happened, and I don't know if Mother Lori ever told you about this, Dad had friends from the seminary, and there was one fella that he had become very close to, and he wrote him. Of course, they didn't have email then, or they didn't know how to get a hold via telephone. He wrote him a letter, and this had taken time, and he wanted to know if he could contact Jay and see how he was. And this man had written back. He was a pastor at that time, and it said, well, Jay just has absolutely no interest in coming back. He's found something else, and he'll write you a letter. I encouraged him to write you a letter, which he did.
And where was he at that
He
time?
was in Canada. It was Hare Krishna letterhead. And I think I gave Jay the letter. He actually wrote it all. I mean, he wrote the whole thing with a manual typewriter, you know. And we didn't know where Jay was, but there was a reporter that supposedly had gone to Canada and had seen all these young men, and there were a lot of them that were considered Dodge drafters, and they were lost. We didn't know what happened to them. So this reporter had made an announcement that he had all these photographs. If you wanted to come down, he would have all the photographs on display. And if you saw your son or your daughter in there, I can tell you where they were, where I took these photos. So they found Jay in these photos. So right away she calls my dad. My dad's like, all right, he was a salesman on the road, and
But they were separated by now.
yes.
Okay.
And Dad went looking for Jay and found out.
Living out of it.
I hope so.
I don't know about this.
I don't know. It's still recording.
Okay, that's good.
Maybe not.
Babu's got it here too.
Okay.
I think, you know what? These may not go more than 3 minutes. This is the
But
problem.
Babu's here now, so
Okay.
that's good.
Okay.
So yeah, I
Yeah.
didn't mean to interrupt.
No. So he had gone up there and Jay was not there. And then my dad got married for a third time. To I called her my step monster. Because she was a monster. And
And how old were you then? Were you like
I was 7.
But you had to live with her.
Yeah, and as she was she looked like Marilyn Monroe. That's what she looked like. She acted like that.
You wanted
She
to
was
be.
maybe, I don't know. She was always burning me in the face because she always had this cigarette and everything. She'd tell me to come over and I'd be like, you know. She didn't clean the house. We didn't have a housekeeper. She was, and I think at this point, Dad was, he had this beautiful young woman, who was a terribly ugly, scarred man, as this woman, and she's beautiful, and she wants him. She didn't really want him, she wanted the money, you know. And Mother Erdman, Mother Lloyd, Grandmother Erdman, she was a tough cookie. She really was. I remember my dad had this convertible, and I was sitting in the back seat, and I would, this house that they had built after Pewaukee, it was called the Monterey, and there was this huge article in the newspaper that featured the Badger Pate home, which was what the name of the company was that my father owned, Badger Pate. And every Sunday, every Saturday and Sunday, every Sunday you could go through for free, but on Saturdays there was a nominal fee that you could pay to go through the first floor of the home. My father, sometimes it scares me when I see him. But of all the things that Jay is and my father was they had a great sense of humor. And my father and Jay would go back and forth on practical jokes. One of the ones that comes to mind that my dad talked about quite a bit was we had a lake property, and my father had built or had a shed built in the back of it, and only part of the roof had been completed, and Jay and his buddies wanted to sleep in there that night. And Dad said, well, if it rains, you have to stay out there. And he was like, oh, we'll be okay. It won't rain. He says, well, I'm going to lock the door. He says, that's okay. We'll be all right. So, at about 11:30, when it started getting quiet outside, and you could tell the boys were really tired, Dad decided that he was going to take the sprinkler and put it on top of the shed. And he turned on the sprinkler, and it rained in there. And they all got up, and they were scrambling to try to get out of there. And they ran up to the house, and the door was locked, and my dad was sitting there on the porch laughing. He turned off the water, and the boys were like, what happened? My dad just stood there and laughed. But they would go back and forth, and one of the things that my dad and Jay, my brother Jeff, my sister Jan, they were all very, very intelligent people, and they constantly challenged each other every day. In my dad's library, he had a chessboard, and I think it took 3 years to finish that game of chess, because they would go over there and make one move, and my dad would talk to him about the other move. And then he always had a game of Risk. That was another like war game that we used to always play. Sheep's Head. But they were constantly challenging each other. One of the things my dad would talk about would be history. And he would talk about what particular thing happened that was enlightening about, I can't think of anybody offhand right now, but I would say, for example, Lincoln. Dad would say, what's a famous quote that he said? And Jay'd be able to come out and spit it out, or my sister Jan would. And I was very small, and I just kind of look around like, I have no idea, don't ask me. I mean, but another time that I was very, very proud of my brother Jay. He's my oldest brother. I have a sister Janice who has passed away. I have mom and dad who have passed away. And I have a brother Jeff who lives in Wisconsin. I live in Virginia. So we're not all in the same place anymore. So what we do have is we have our memories. My brother Jay was always a source of challenge, is what one of my aunts used to say. And I know that he was destined to be where he is. Where can he be in his life and touch this many lives and know the right thing to do? So it was his destiny to be here. It was his destiny in this lifetime. I'm very proud of him. He's my brother, my big brother. Now, it's not to say that when I was little, he would take my doll and throw it into the lake, but just to annoy me, or walk by me and ping me in the head or something, That's what brothers do. But one of the times that I remember, I was very proud of him. My father, it was America. It was the Vietnam War had just broke out, and I'd come home after school and go in. We all had to go in and say hi to Dad. And there was this rocking chair that was next to my father's leather chair, and of course he had the TV on, and they would give the count of how many people had died that day in the war on the evening news. And my father thought, well, Jay will send him to military school, and that way he won't be on the front lines. He'll be able to go through the war and be a sergeant or somebody who doesn't have to carry a gun and be on the front lines. And of course, that was not what Jay wanted to do either. He had his reasons and my father had his, which were mainly because this was his son and he felt that this is what he needed to do. But he went to St. John's Military Academy, and I always remembered Jay. We all had well, not me, but all the boys had buzz cuts, which was very short hair, and we were always running around in our swim shorts because the lake was right there. We were always in the lake, and we always wore just a t-shirt or a sweatshirt, nothing fancy. But that's how I had remembered my brother. And then all of a sudden we went up to see him at St. John's Military Academy. And he was wearing this uniform. And he looked like a soldier. And I'm looking at all these people and I'm thinking, why are they all dressed like this? Is it Halloween? I didn't understand. And then they, actually that was the first time I had ever seen anything quite like that, because they had this march and they would do a thing with a gun, and I really didn't quite understand it, but my father was very proud of him. He was proud of the fact that he had this discipline of doing this regiment. And when I think back on that, I think because that was something that my father wanted for Jay, was to have him be in the military and make him proud. There were a lot of boys that thought that they were making their families proud by going there. It was a confusing time. The 60s was, I don't know. Have we ever gotten over it? Is it done yet? I'm not sure. And that's where Jay wound up, and he came up with what he felt his calling was. My father's calling was different. Your calling may be different. I'm very proud of who he is and what he's become. I don't know where or if anyone can say that they touched so many lives. So I'm very proud of my brother. I'm not sure if I'd answered any questions, if anybody wanted to know anything about him. It's kind of funny sometimes because I'll see these tape recordings on the Facebook, because that's kind of how I keep up with them. And everybody's like they are here. And I'm thinking, you know, he used to take my doll and throw it in the lake. That's not the same guy, I'm telling you. But as kids, we had a pretty good childhood. Jeff, my younger brother, or I should say, my older brother, Jeff, Jay's younger brother, he's a philosopher, and he and Jay do not always see eye to eye. I think they challenge each other through their conversations. And it's not that Jay doesn't want to know Jeff, and Jeff doesn't want to know Jay. I think they just are in two different places. But my father would be proud of Jay today, I think. Right before my father had his stroke, I should say not right after, but the day that I found out that he had the stroke, they called me. And I quickly ran to the hospital. And I was working at a Mexican restaurant at the time, and he could smell the spices on me. And the door, the room had two people in it, and the curtain was closed. And he said, "Leslie?" And I said, "Yes." I go, "How'd you know I was here?" He says, "I could smell you. Now come in here and help me." He wanted to get up onto the side of the bed, and this big, strong man that I knew as my father was crying, and he wanted to get up. He didn't want to sit. He didn't want any help. This was gonna go away, and he was gonna get over it. And every day for 47 days I had to go to the hospital, and he insisted that I bring a pad of paper and 2 pencils, or 2 pens, 2 pieces of something to write with. And because Jay had left Wisconsin, and there had been a disconnect with his dad, our father. And I never second guessed the fact after I went through that with my dad, that he adored this man, he adored this child, and he, as parents do, they love their children. They disappoint us, but at the end of the day, they're still your children, and you still love them. And you still want to share your wisdom with them, and you want to see them grow. And Dad pretty much purged everything that he felt bad about when he was not there with Jay. And I know I gave the writings to Jay. I sound like a very selfish young lady, because I was like, I got better things to do than sit here and write this, Dad. But he wanted to talk to Jay, and he knew that he wouldn't have the opportunity to talk to Jay, but he did know that I would see Jay. And my father was proud of him. So that was good.
I have a question from Guru. He asked that after he joined the movement, was there any spiritual changes in the family?
Yeah, I think there was. Now, Jay, our family, my father had studied the ministry and was going to become a Lutheran pastor at some point. That was going to be his job as the family. So my dad felt that, you know, we were pretty strong Lutherans. I know that my father didn't want Jay to be a pastor, but I think that he felt that Jay had the ability and the spiritualness. Being Lutheran, we were the middle of the road. There's 3 different kinds of Lutherans. It's a religion derived from Catholic, a movement that was done by Martin Luther, and there's a ELCA, very laxed, Missouri Senate, which is what we were, and then there was Wisconsin Senate, which is very strict. And I know growing up that was pretty much shoved down our throats. Our father was going to be a pastor, so. But with Jay, he knew all that stuff. He knew it. He knew how my father was. He knew the discipline of it, and actually was kind of bored with it, I think. I remember there was a guy that lived a couple doors down from us. I used to go there after school. They had like 12 kids, and I would go over there and help the lady with her laundry and carry things up and down, help her start dinner. And her husband said to me, "You know that brother of yours, he should be a spiritual leader or some kind of pastor." And I think that was felt with all of us. So.
Good. Thank you.
Anything else? Yeah, Mother Lori. Mother Lori is my stepmother. After Jay's mother Lori and my father divorced, 3 children, my father married again to my mother, and they were married less than 2 years. And Mother Lori did some raising of me. She was very involved with Jay. She thought, I don't know, as a parent, you never let go, I don't think. I think I told somebody earlier about this. We didn't know where Jay was, and I didn't even know he was missing. But you know, it was. I was so much younger, and a reporter from the Milwaukee Journal, which that was the biggest newspaper in our area, had contacted or put an ad in the paper and said that because so many parents had complained that they couldn't find their children, it was like this Hare Krishna thing. You know, they're being hypnotized, you know, and but you could come down, and they had an afternoon where this reporter had all these photographs and he knew where he had taken them. And he invited mothers, fathers, sisters, brothers to come down and take a look at these pictures, and he'd be able to tell you where he had taken that photo. And Jay was down there, and he told Mother Lori that it was in Canada, so my dad was on the next plane, and he went up there, and Jay wasn't there. He had already gone to India. But Mother Lori was, she knew there was a purpose for him, and she was very nurturing as a mom. I miss her so much. And she was a good mom. And she loved her son.